The first Zarn warships breached Earth's atmosphere like obsidian daggers piercing a fragile membrane. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the underground research facility beneath Stanford University, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the holographic displays tracking the invasion. Outside, the world was changing forever. The Zarn Collective represented the pinnacle of technological warfare, a species that had conquered hundreds of civilizations across 3 galactic sectors. Their ships were living biomechanical organisms, capable of adapting to any defensive strategy within milliseconds. Each vessel was a perfect killing machine, grown rather than constructed, with neural networks that could predict and counter defensive maneuvers before they were even conceived. Elena knew this better than most. Her doctoral research had focused on xenotechnology, specifically studying the computational matrices of advanced alien civilizations. She'd spent years analyzing intercepted Zarn communication fragments, developing theories about their seemingly impenetrable technological superiority. The initial assault was surgical. Massive gravitational disruptors knocked out global communication networks simultaneously. Power grids across continents went dark. Military installations found their advanced weapon systems suddenly paralyzed by unknown electromagnetic frequencies. It was a total systems collapse designed to happen in less than 17 minutes. 17 minutes, Elena muttered to herself, watching the global defense networks crumble in real time. 17 minutes to destroy everything humanity has built. But something wasn't right. A microscopic anomaly flickered across her quantum monitoring system, a tiny imperfection in the Zarn's supposedly perfect invasion algorithm. Most researchers would have missed it. Most humans would have been consumed by panic. But Elena Rodriguez was not most humans. She activated the experimental quantum communication network she'd been developing in secret. It was a moonshot project, funded through black budgets and her own relentless determination. Colleagues had called it impossible. The global scientific community had dismissed her theories as academic fantasy. Now it might be humanity's last hope. The network came online with a soft hum that seemed to resonate through the very molecular structure of the facility. Quantum entanglement principles allowed for communication that defied traditional understanding, instantaneous, untrackable, existing in multiple states simultaneously. Her first transmission was simple, encrypted, designed to slip through the tiniest crack in the Zarn's communication barriers. They think, broken. Just stay arted. Across the planet, similar pockets of resistance were forming. In military bunkers, research facilities, and hidden communication centers, humanity's most brilliant minds were already adapting. The Zarn had studied humanity for decades, analyzing our history, our technologies, our social structures. They believed they understood us completely. They were wrong. What the Zarn couldn't comprehend was human unpredictability, our capacity to transform crisis into opportunity, our fundamental ability to reimagine solutions when conventional approaches failed. Elena's quantum network began collecting and processing data from thousands of sources simultaneously. Each input was a potential strategy, a fragment of resistance. Military communications, scientific research databases, civilian communication networks, all were being integrated into a living, breathing resistance algorithm. Outside the facility, the first Zarn ground forces began their systematic territorial control. Massive biomechanical walkers moved with terrifying precision, scanning and categorizing human infrastructure. They moved like a perfect machine, each unit connected to the collective consciousness, believing total victory was inevitable. They didn't see the spark of human innovation already spreading like a virus through their supposedly impenetrable systems. Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a slight smile. The Zarn thought they were conducting an invasion. In reality, they had just triggered humanity's most important evolutionary moment. The quantum network pulsed. Information flowed. Resistance was taking shape. The real battle was just beginning. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. The Silicon Valley underground was no longer just a metaphor. 60 meters beneath the ruins of what was once the world's most innovative technological hub, Major Jack Chen assembled a battalion of humanity's most dangerous weapon. Its misfits, makers, and dreamers. Aisha Patel, a 17-year-old hacker prodigy, hunched over a cobbled-together communication system that looked like a nightmare born from computer parts salvaged from 3 different decades. Her fingers danced across jury-rate interfaces, creating communication pathways the Zarn couldn't possibly anticipate. "They think destroying our infrastructure means destroying our ability to fight," Jack muttered, examining a wall covered in tactical diagrams. Each map was a living thing, constantly updated, morphing with real-time information streaming in from resistance pockets around the globe. The Zarn's invasion strategy relied on total technological domination. They'd systematically targeted communication networks, power grids, and military installations. Their biomechanical walkers prowled city streets, scanning and categorizing human infrastructure with cold, calculated precision. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. Humanity's strength was never in its existing infrastructure. It was in its ability to rebuild, to improvise, to transform crisis into opportunity. "Got something," Aisha announced, her voice cutting through the tension. A holographic display flickered to life, showing intercepted Zarn communication frequencies. "Their network is incredibly complex, but it's also predictable. They communicate like a massive unified machine. No room for individual adaptation." Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, Alina's brother and a brilliant mechanical engineer, was converting household appliances into makeshift communication jammers and weapons. A microwave became an electromagnetic pulse generator. A refrigerator's cooling system transformed into a precision targeting mechanism. "We're not fighting their technology," Marcus explained to a group of engineers and survivors. "We're fighting their philosophy. They believe in absolute control, perfect systems. We believe in chaos, in adaptation." Outside their underground sanctuary, a Zarn patrol approached. The biomechanical walkers moved with terrifying synchronization, each unit connected to a collective consciousness, scanning for any human resistance. Jack Chen's team was ready. The first attack came unexpectedly. Instead of conventional weapons, they used a combination of electromagnetic disruption and psychological warfare. Speakers broadcast a cacophony of human sounds, music, speeches, children laughing, designed to overwhelm the Zarn's sensory inputs. The walker units hesitated. For the first time, their perfect algorithmic responses encountered something they couldn't categorize. Aisha's hacked communication system sent a cascade of false signals, creating phantom resistance groups across the city. The Zarn's collective consciousness tried to process multiple conflicting data streams simultaneously. Their system began to fracture. One walker unit suddenly turned on another, its targeting systems corrupted by the human-generated chaos. The precision of the Zarn invasion began to crack, revealing fundamental weaknesses in their supposedly perfect technological approach. "They can't handle randomness," Marcus observed, watching the walkers become increasingly confused. "Their entire technological philosophy is based on predictive modeling. But humans? We thrive in uncertainty." Jack Chen understood something profound in that moment. This wasn't just a military conflict. It was a war of fundamental philosophies, rigid control versus dynamic adaptation. By the operation's end, they'd destroyed 3 Zarn walkers without firing a single conventional weapon. They'd used creativity, improvisation, and an understanding of technological psychology that the aliens could never have predicted. The underground resistance was more than a military unit. It was a living, breathing organism of human potential, each member bringing unique skills, each moment an opportunity for innovation. Aisha looked up from her communication system, a slight smile crossing her face. "They have no idea what's coming." In the depths of the Silicon Valley underground, humanity's true resistance was taking shape, not through superior firepower, but through an unprecedented capacity to reimagine the very nature of conflict. The Zarn thought they were conducting an invasion. They had no idea they were unleashing humanity's most powerful evolutionary moment. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. Dr. Marcus Williams stood before a wall of holographic displays, each screen a window into the complex psychological landscape of the alien invasion. As the world's foremost synapsepsychologist, he understood something most military strategists missed. Warfare was fundamentally a battle of perceptions. The Zarn Collective represented a consciousness unlike anything humanity had encountered. They were not individuals, but a massive interconnected neural network, each member a node in a perfect predictive system. Emotion, individual experience, uncertainty, these were concepts entirely alien to their fundamental understanding of existence. We're not just fighting a technological war, Marcus explained to his team of psychologists, linguists, and communication specialists. We're fighting a war of consciousness. Their weapon was information, but not just any information, carefully crafted psychological triggers designed to exploit the fundamental weaknesses in the Zarn's collective thinking. The first transmission went out on frequencies the Zarn believed they completely controlled. It wasn't a military message. It wasn't a threat. It was a story. A recording of a young girl's birthday party. The laughter, the chaos, the pure unpredictability of human emotion began to flood the Zarn's communication networks. Mathematical models couldn't predict the emotional resonance of a child's joy. Predictive algorithms broke down when confronted with genuine human spontaneity. Across the planet, similar psychological warfare units were at work. In Tokyo, a team of linguists created communication patterns that defied the Zarn's translation matrices. In Rio de Janeiro, artists and musicians generated audio-visual signals that introduced pure chaos into the aliens' sensory inputs. The Zarn's collective consciousness began to experience something unprecedented: cognitive dissonance. Each transmission was a precision-crafted psychological weapon. Stories of human resilience, moments of unexpected kindness, demonstrations of individual sacrifice that made no logical sense from a collective perspective. Marcus watched the initial results with scientific fascination. The Zarn's communication network started showing microscopic fractures. Their perfect, unified consciousness was experiencing something akin to emotional feedback loops. They're experiencing uncertainty, one of his team members observed, something their entire evolutionary process has never encountered. The psychological assault wasn't about defeating the Zarn militarily. It was about introducing a virus of perception, demonstrating the power of individual experience, of emotional complexity that transcended pure logic. One particularly effective transmission featured recordings from survivors across different cultures. An elderly woman in Mumbai describing her life's journey. A child in New Zealand explaining why he loved his grandmother. A musician in Buenos Aires talking about the emotions behind a particular composition. These were not just stories. They were tactical psychological instruments designed to shatter the Zarn's understanding of individual existence. The collective consciousness began to experience something terrifyingly new: individual perspective. Microscopic variations started appearing in Zarn communication patterns. Their perfect predictive algorithms began to show traces of uncertainty. "We're not just resisting," Marcus whispered, watching the holographic displays. "We're teaching them an entirely new way of experiencing reality." By introducing pure human unpredictability into their systems, they were doing something more profound than fighting an invasion. They were challenging the very fundamental understanding of consciousness that the Zarn had developed over millennia. The psychological battlefield was revealing humanity's most powerful weapon, our capacity to find meaning, connection, and hope in the most impossible circumstances. The Zarn thought they were conducting a conventional invasion. They had no idea they were about to experience a revolution of consciousness. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's quantum communication network hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. What had begun as an experimental research project was now humanity's most advanced technological weapon, a living, adaptive intelligence that existed beyond traditional computational boundaries. The facility beneath Stanford University had transformed. What was once a cutting-edge research center was now the nerve center of humanity's technological resistance. Engineers from every discipline worked in perfect synchronization, their individual expertise combining into something far greater than the sum of its parts. Dr. Rajesh Kapoor, a quantum computing expert, stood before a series of holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living information. "It's not just a network," he explained to a group of stunned military strategists. "It's a cognitive ecosystem that learns and evolves with each interaction." The breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of quantum entanglement principles, machine learning algorithms, and a fundamental reimagining of computational logic. Traditional computing was linear. The Zarn's technology was predictive. But this new system was something entirely different, an adaptive intelligence that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. "We're not trying to match their technology," Elena explained, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to respond to her thoughts. "We're creating something they cannot comprehend." The first true test came when a Zarn battle group approached a major population center. Their invasion algorithms predicted total victory within minutes. Their computational models showed a 99.997% chance of successful territorial control. They were about to encounter that tiny 0.003% of human unpredictability. The quantum network didn't just intercept Zarn communication frequencies. It began to understand them, to predict them. And then, most terrifyingly for the aliens, to manipulate them. Weapon systems that the Zarn believed were completely disabled suddenly showed signs of life, not through traditional hacking, but through a fundamental reimagining of their operational parameters. The quantum network was rewriting technological possibilities in real time. A retired rocket scientist named Maria Gonzalez had been working on a system that could transform everyday infrastructure into defensive mechanisms. A traffic control system became an electromagnetic pulse generator. A city's electrical grid transformed into a massive defensive network. "They studied our technology," Maria said, a fierce glint in her eye. "But they never understood our capacity for innovation." The quantum network began to do something unprecedented. It started generating solutions to problems before they fully manifested. Defensive strategies emerged not through traditional computational logic, but through a kind of technological intuition that seemed almost alive. Across the planet, similar innovation centers were emerging. In Seoul, a team of engineers was converting industrial manufacturing systems into adaptive defense networks. In Lagos, communication specialists were developing transmission systems that could exist in multiple frequencies simultaneously. The Zarn's invasion was predicated on the belief that they could predict and control every possible human response. They had mathematical models that showed how civilizations would respond to their technological superiority. They had never encountered a species that could fundamentally rewrite the rules of technological engagement. Elena Rodriguez watched as the quantum network pulsed with an energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Each interaction was a conversation. Each moment of resistance was an evolution. "We're not just fighting," she whispered to Rajesh. "We're redefining the very nature of technological possibility." The Zarn thought they were conducting a conventional invasion. They were about to discover that humanity's true strength was its capacity to transform limitation into opportunity. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. Major Jack Chen stood in the underground command center, watching as a living, breathing resistance network came to life across the planet. This was no traditional military operation. This was a global organism of human potential, each community a node of resistance, each individual a potential catalyst for transformation. The invasion had stripped away the artificial boundaries that once divided humanity. National identities, cultural differences, economic disparities, all dissolved in the face of a common threat. What emerged was something far more powerful than any single nation or culture, a global citizenship of resistance. In Mumbai, A network of street vendors converted their communication systems into a sophisticated intelligence-gathering platform. In Rio de Janeiro, community centers became rapid manufacturing hubs, producing adaptive defensive technologies. In Lagos, a group of university students developed communication encryption methods that made the Zarn's tracking systems obsolete. "We're not just fighting," Jack told his international command team. "We're reimagining human potential." The resistance was decentralized by design. No single point of failure. No predictable command structure. Each community developed its own adaptive strategies, sharing information through quantum communication networks that the Zarn could never fully comprehend. A teenage hacker in Seoul could develop a defensive algorithm that would be instantaneously shared with resistance groups in Buenos Aires. A group of retired engineers in Toronto could design an infrastructure modification that would be implemented in Cape Town within hours. The Zarn had studied human civilization for decades. They believed they understood our social structures, our technological capabilities, our psychological limitations. They were catastrophically wrong. What they couldn't comprehend was humanity's capacity for collective innovation, our ability to transform crisis into opportunity. The power of a truly global, interconnected resistance that drew strength from its diversity. Jack Chen watched as the resistance network began to show emergent behaviors that defied traditional military understanding. It wasn't just a fighting force. It was a living, adaptive intelligence. Their first major counteroffensive wasn't a military attack. It was a complete reimagining of infrastructure. Power grids became defensive networks. Transportation systems transformed into communication platforms. Every urban environment became a potential battleground where the rules of engagement constantly shifted. A Zarn battle group approaching Mexico City encountered something they could never have predicted. The entire city had become an adaptive defensive organism. Traffic systems redirected to create massive electromagnetic interference. Building electrical systems generated localized energy disruption fields. The city itself had become a weapon. Similar transformations were happening globally. In Sydney, suburban communities developed distributed manufacturing networks that could produce adaptive defensive technologies faster than the Zarn could track or destroy them. In Moscow, a network of mathematicians and computer scientists developed prediction algorithms that could anticipate Zarn movement patterns with terrifying accuracy. "We're not just resisting," Jack told his command team. "We're evolving." The global uprising was more than a military response. It was a fundamental reimagining of human potential. Each community, each individual became a potential point of resistance. The Zarn's invasion had triggered humanity's most profound evolutionary moment. Their strategic networks, designed for absolute control and prediction, began to break down when confronted with pure human unpredictability. A resistance that had no central command, no predictable structure, no single point of failure. The Zarn thought they were conducting an invasion. They had no idea they were witnessing the birth of a new form of global consciousness. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. The Galactic Council chamber fell into an unprecedented silence. Holographic displays showed the unfolding Earth conflict, a scenario that defied every known model of interstellar conquest. Representatives from 17 advanced civilizations watched in collective disbelief as humanity transformed an invasion into something entirely unprecedented. Ambassador Jireen of the Orion Confederacy was the first to break the silence, a crystalline being whose species had observed galactic conflicts for millennia. Jireen's multifaceted consciousness struggled to process what was unfolding. "They are not following any known conflict paradigm," Jireen announced, their translucent form shifting with agitation. The holographic displays showed humanity's resistance, not as a traditional military response, but as a living, adaptive system that seemed to evolve with each passing moment. The Zarn Collective had been the galaxy's most feared conquest force for over 3,000 standard cycles. Their technological superiority was considered absolute. Civilizations would typically surrender within hours of their initial assault. Entire planetary systems would collapse under the weight of their perfectly calculated invasion strategies. But Earth was different. Diplomatic channels began lighting up across the galaxy. Secret communications passed between council members, each transmission carrying a mixture of fear, fascination, and something almost resembling hope. Dr. Lyra Voss, the human representative to the Galactic Council, who had been consistently marginalized and often ignored, now found herself at the center of unprecedented attention. Her holographic projection stood calm, almost amused by the collective panic surrounding her. "Humanity has always been underestimated," she said quietly. "We excel at transformation." The evidence was overwhelming. Where the Czarn expected total capitulation, humans were reimagining entire systems of resistance. Communication networks that shouldn't exist were flourishing. Defensive technologies were being developed faster than they could be destroyed. Each Czarn computational model failed more spectacularly than the last. Ambassador Kthax from the Proxima Collective leaned forward, multiple sensory appendages quivering with intensity. Their technological adaptation rate exceeds any known civilizational response by 847%. How is this possible? Dr. Voss allowed herself a slight smile. Because we don't see limitations, we see opportunities. The holographic displays showed scenes that defied traditional military understanding. A city's entire infrastructure transforming into a defensive network. Community centers becoming rapid manufacturing hubs. Individual humans displaying levels of innovative thinking that seemed to break fundamental laws of technological engagement. Some council members began advocating immediate intervention, not to support the Czarn, but to prevent humanity from becoming an even greater threat. Others saw something else, a potential evolutionary model that could reshape galactic civilization. "They are not just fighting," muttered Ambassador Jareen. "They are evolving in real time." Classified reports began circulating, intercepted communications that revealed the true nature of humanity's resistance. It wasn't a military response. It was a collective consciousness that emerged spontaneously, transcending traditional understanding of social organization. Each human community became a node of resistance, each individual a potential catalyst of transformation. The invasion had stripped away artificial boundaries, creating a global organism of unprecedented potential. The Czarn had studied humanity for decades. They believed they understood our social structures, our technological limitations, our psychological barriers. They were catastrophically wrong. What emerged was a civilization that didn't just resist, it transformed the very nature of conflict. A living, adaptive intelligence that drew strength from diversity, that could reimagine possibilities faster than any computational model could predict. Dr. Lyra Voss watched the council's reaction with a calm that bordered on amusement. Humanity was no longer being evaluated as a potential conquest. For the first time, they were being seen as a potential evolutionary model. "We're not just fighting," she said softly, her words resonating through the council chamber. "We're demonstrating what's possible when a species refuses to accept imposed limitations." The Galactic Council watched, collectively holding its breath. The invasion of Earth was no longer just a conflict. It had become a fundamental redefinition of civilizational potential. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. The final battle wasn't what anyone expected. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of humanity's most profound technological achievement, a quantum communication network that had become something more than a mere communication system. It was a living, breathing consciousness that existed beyond traditional computational boundaries. The Czarn Collective approached Earth's solar system with what they believed was an overwhelming force. Thousands of biomechanical warships, each connected to a unified consciousness that had conquered hundreds of civilizations. Their computational models predicted total victory with 98% certainty. They were about to encounter that microscopic 0.2% of human unpredictability. The first wave of Czarn ships entered the solar system with mathematical precision. Each vessel moved in perfect synchronization, their collective consciousness calculating millions of potential scenarios simultaneously. They had studied humanity for decades, analyzed every possible defensive strategy. They had no idea what was coming. The Linus quantum network was no longer just a technological system. It had become a cognitive ecosystem that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. It didn't just intercept Zarn communication frequencies. It understood them, predicted them, and then, most terrifyingly, began to manipulate them. Weapon systems the Zarn believed were completely disabled suddenly showed signs of life, not through traditional hacking, but through a fundamental reimagining of their operational parameters. Infrastructure became defensive networks. Everyday technologies transformed into adaptive weapon systems. "We're not fighting their technology," Elena whispered to her team. "We're teaching them an entirely new way of experiencing reality." The battle unfolded across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical confrontation merged with psychological warfare. Technological disruption became a form of communication. Each moment was a negotiation, each interaction a potential transformation. Zarn ships found their perfect computational models breaking down. Communication networks fractured. Their unified consciousness began experiencing something unprecedented: individual perspective. Major Jack Chen coordinated a global resistance that was less a military operation and more a living, adaptive intelligence. Communities across the planet became nodes of a resistance network that could respond and evolve faster than any traditional military structure. In orbit, the quantum network began doing something the Zarn could never comprehend. It wasn't just defending. It was communicating, introducing concepts of individual experience, of emotional complexity that transcended pure logic. The Zarn's collective consciousness began to experience microscopic variations, uncertainty, something their entire evolutionary process had never encountered. "We're not destroying them," Dr. Marcus Williams observed, watching the psychological feedback loops. "We're helping them evolve." Weapon systems became conversation platforms. Defensive technologies transformed into bridges of understanding. The very nature of conflict was being redefined in real time. As the final confrontation reached its peak, something extraordinary happened. The boundary between resistance and communication began to dissolve. Humanity wasn't just fighting the Zarn. They were offering them a fundamentally different way of experiencing existence. The quantum network pulsed with an energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Each interaction was a conversation. Each moment of resistance was an evolution. The Zarn thought they were conducting a conventional invasion. They were about to discover that humanity's true strength was its capacity to transform limitation into opportunity. Asterisk to be continued. Asterisk. The transformation was neither a victory nor a defeat. It was an evolution. When the dust settled, the Zarn collective was no longer the same civilization that had entered Earth's solar system. Their unified consciousness had experienced something fundamental: the power of individual perspective, the strength of unpredictability, the profound complexity of emotional intelligence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the Galactic Council, not as a conquered species representative, but as a catalyst of civilizational transformation. The quantum communication network she had developed now represented something far beyond a technological achievement. It was a bridge between fundamentally different ways of experiencing existence. "We didn't defeat you," she explained to the assembled alien representatives. "We invited you to evolve." The Zarn's representative, no longer a perfect, unified consciousness, but now displaying individual characteristics, struggled to articulate the profound shift that had occurred. Their invasion had been a systematic process of conquest. Humanity had transformed it into a process of mutual understanding. Across the galaxy, civilizations watched in collective amazement. The Zarn collective, once the most feared conquest force, had been fundamentally altered. Their rigid predictive systems had been replaced by something more dynamic, more alive. Major Jack Chen and Dr. Marcus Williams stood as living testaments to humanity's true strength, not military might, not technological superiority, but an unprecedented capacity for adaptation, for seeing potential where others saw only limitation. The Galactic Council's chambers were no longer a place of rigid diplomatic protocols. They had become a forum of genuine communication, where differences were not just tolerated but celebrated. Humanity was no longer seen as a young, primitive species to be conquered or controlled. We had become a fundamental model of evolutionary potential, a civilization that could transform conflict into communication, limitation into opportunity. The quantum network continued to pulse, a living testament to human innovation. It was more than a communication system now. It was a platform of mutual understanding, a bridge between fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Dr. Lyra Voss, humanity's representative, captured the moment perfectly in her address to the Galactic Council. We don't seek to conquer. We seek to understand. And in understanding, we all evolve. The invasion that was meant to destroy humanity had instead revealed our true potential. We were not just survivors. We were transformative agents of galactic consciousness. The Zarn had entered our solar system expecting total conquest. They left having discovered something far more profound, the true meaning of evolution. Epilogue ***. In a quiet moment, Elena Rodriguez looked at the quantum network she had helped create. It was no longer just a technological achievement. It was a living testament to human potential. The universe would never be the same. The end.